Hey guys, it's go time. This is our week. It's the AP stats test on Friday, and wanted to go over this review guide. This is basically the one-stop shop for you as far as things that you can do to get yourself ready for the test on Friday. You've already done a lot to prepare even before the closure. Some of you have been working really hard on some of the review stuff that I've been putting out, which is awesome to see. Um, but this is just a good way to kind of do some last minute things to get yourself ready and set up for success. So let's get to it. All right. You got the email for this link. It's also going to be in Google Classroom for you to be able to just click onto this, and then from here you can go to any of the links that I put out. So the first thing is this AP practice test for 2020. So it's hard to know what's going to be on the test. There's just going to be a lot of different things and a lot of different parts. That's for sure. So the first question is 25 minutes with 6 parts to it, maybe. That's a guess, just judging by how it's split up. The second part is 15 minutes, but it could be as many as 5 parts to it. I think they're doing that. I think they might do that just so that you have to move real fast and leaves less time to look things up. So have all your notes ready to go, but trust your instincts on these. So this is a good chance for you to take a look at that. What you can do is control right click and then click on that. It'll take you for your classroom, the assignment. Right now I'm looking at period 3's assignment, but there it is. So there you can look at the video to get you situated on that, and then you can look at the actual problem. All right. This problem, as you can see, has a bunch of different parts. If some of the symbols don't go through, let me know. This should be able to view in a different window, but I'm not sure what's going on there. Anyway, so what are some things that you want to think about while you're getting yourself ready? Because they're trying to include a bunch of different topics into one question, they may not have you do a whole lot of calculations and more interpretations. So think about a question like this one here, right? This question. This is just like doing a significance test, right? That was the n times p greater than or equal to 10. That should be n1 minus p greater than or equal to 10. What is that condition for, right? So why did we do that? What's the check? You have to look that up, but those are good things to know about, okay? On Wednesday, I'm going to have the answer key for this and go over the answers to all of this, but it's a good chance for you to go through and check it yourself, okay? The other question that's kind of different in the inference test is instead of actually having you calculate the p-value, this one is talking about interpreting the p-value. And we've done that before. You have this in your notes, but I'm going to show you it real quick right there. So take a look. If you want to interpret a p-value, this is the sentence alone. Remember, it's a probability of us getting a sample that we get. So pause your video, write this sentence down, okay? And if you want to pause and write that when we talk about conclusions, like what conclusion can you make, that's a good one as well. We've done a lot of practice with that. Okay, all right, back to the review guide. Okay, so we've talked about the AP practice test. This is specially made for this year, so it's a good thing for you. There's some new material that we've got that we haven't seen before. Getting a significance test with means, which requires us to use degrees of freedom and the t-table. So if you want to go through all these new things, I've done videos on that. I've reviewed how to get the p-value with your calculator, all here. Practice, get feedback. When you submit these, I send feedback to you and give you the answers, and tell you how well you did. Okay, so there's those. All right. And then a bunch of things that you can just print out, have ready for yourself. Um, if some of you are thinking about doing the keyboard, just getting nervous about writing it on hand and then submitting it with your phone, this right here is your tips to using symbols, just typing out on the keyboard. Okay, so you click on that. You can take a look at all the ways to, like if you want to say mu, just write it out, mu, x bar, p hat, you know, these symbols, you can have this handy. We were doing binomial, we were doing binomial in the calculator, so that's probably looking a little different for you. But you know, greater than, not equal to, that stuff. You can write all of these things out if you decide to use your calculator. If you want to talk about how to do fractions, this shows you how to do or write out your fraction. Okay, and those are totally legit ways of going about this. Okay, so you've got that as a good thing. If you want to think about the things that College Board is looking for when they are looking at your answers, this is some tips for answering FRQs. The probability rules here are a quick just run through on the probability stuff. If you really want to kind of get yourself back into the swing of things with probability, I suggest go back to the Google Classroom assignments on Unit 4. That's probability. Definitions for like experiment, observational, what types of samples, that stuff. This is a good resource for that. And then just in general, kind of when we talk about describing distributions, what are the things you want to say? When we think about chapter 3 and R, the correlation coefficient, all that stuff, you can take a look at that cheat sheet for that. All right. You should have this. I think they mailed these out to you. This is a good video to go through and take notes on what do the different symbols mean. I'm going to go over one real quick. So when you click on this, you double click, it'll take you to your assignment in Google Classroom, which is this. It's not an assignment, it's just the notes. All of this stuff is posted there as well. And then you look at your formula sheet. So what do we have here? This is a good chance if you have your sheet that's printed out already, start to take notes. If you don't, maybe take some notes on the side, write out the formulas that I talk about. So I'm going to explain a couple things here and try to use the pen if I can. All right, so let's see how this works. So when we look at this thing here, this is something that you may not have been used to seeing. When it comes to the equation of a line, this is only something that you would use if they gave you these things here. Okay, this is the standard deviation of y, standard deviation of x, and r. You would use that to calculate your slope. See how the b here is slope, okay? So that's the only time you would ever need to deal with that. We did that when we were talking about chapter 3. We practiced that. You would calculate your slope, and then from there you can calculate using a value of x and a value of y, the y-intercept, okay? But you would only do that if you were given these two things. That would be unique, okay? This is standard deviation of y, standard deviation of x. All right, okay, so let's continue on. See if this goes down. Lovely. Here are your binomial and geometric. If you were looking at this, you would see this formula. We used binom PDF or CDF. And then we talked about what are the things that you needed to know is the N, the P, and the X, and you would label that. Okay, same with this. You could do this by hand, or you could say geomet, PDF, CDF, and then this one has just the P, no N, and the X, right? That was what we did in the calculator. Now, what makes a binomial setting? You've got to have a fixed set of trials, right? That's our N. Okay, what about geometric? You have to have until the first success, right? The probability, it's not the fixed set until the first success. How's this going? Is it two C's? No, it's not. Whatever. Okay, we're done. All right. So that's that for binom and geomet. All right. Now, continuing on. This one is a biggie here. Okay, we're gonna look at this guy. All right, and see if I can use a different color now so that it doesn't get confused. Okay, this here is the same as z-score. So what are we talking about here? It's z equals the value minus the mean all over the standard deviation. That is what this is talking about here, okay? And it's different when it comes to a sampling distribution. So if it's a sampling distribution, this standard deviation, if it's means, it would be the standard deviation over the square root of n. If it's the sampling distribution for proportions, it would be the square root of n minus, or n p, sorry, p 1 minus p all over n, okay? If it's a regular population, you don't need to use those formulas, right? Okay, all right, so that's that. There's the confidence interval that I kind of wrote over here. All right, let's change back to green. The statistic, when you talk about this, that could be your x bar or your p hat, right? Depending on what you use, if it's means, it's x bar. If it's proportions, it's p hat. Okay, the critical value, if it's means, is t star. If it's proportions, it's z star. And then the standard error you can get from the formulas below. I'll scroll down in a minute, but this could also be, I'll just write it out, the s over the square root of n, which is for means, and then the square root of p 1 minus p all over n. Okay, so that's the idea there. If we're looking at this, the chi-squared thing is not something we're doing, okay? So you don't have to worry about that, okay? All right. Here's the more sets of formulas here. You can see that p 1 minus p over the square root of n, or over n, all of that good stuff. Here is if you had two proportions. That's what we're having, two populations. So that's something that we didn't really get to, but it's there. Same for means, okay? And just like before, You never really got to this stuff, and you don't need to worry about this stuff, okay? All right, let's keep going down. You've got the z-score, all right? So when I was talking about p-value and having to interpret p-value, you might have to just see as a critical value and get the p-value from there. So if I'm ever given a z, right, this is where I go. This is the table I go to, okay? There's the positive and the negative, right? You guys have had a lot of experience getting the probability from this table, which is awesome. I think you're in great shape with that. One quick note to talk about that. Remember, when we're here, you're not getting the probability until you actually have a z or a critical value, all right, for that. And that's when you look at the probability of z being less than, right? Whatever your thing is, okay? So if it's not less than, you've got to switch it and do the 1 minus afterwards, okay? And if it's a significance test and the critical value is, and the alternative is a greater than, then you have to still do that 1 minus, okay? So always use that, all right? If you are dealing with means and you're getting the critical value of the mean here, this comes into play. The degrees of freedom comes into play. So anytime you're talking about getting the critical value for a t-star, or getting the p-value, right, the probability for a t-star, tail probability, right, you have to worry about degrees of freedom. And degrees of freedom, we'll write that in here, this right here, df is your sample size minus 1, okay? And you always round down. So when we think about this thing here going up to just starting to skip by tens and then past 1,000, if you have a degree of freedom of 99, you still go down to 80. All right, you don't round up to 100. All right, just using this table, it's like just give yourself some degrees of freedom, some wiggle room. All right, and then this guy, as much as it would have been fun to get to, we still would have been pressed for time for this anyway, so we're not worried about this at all. Okay, so there's your formulas page. All right, this is the deal. And then if you're looking for confidence level, remember this is what you want to use for that. Okay, all right, so you've got all that stuff. I know this is a long video. There's additional review stuff. You got so many goodies here to get yourself ready. If you're tired of FRQs and you just want to practice some inference, Unit 7, just click on this and go right to the StatsMedic page. And then at the very end, a lot of you have already been taking tests, so you have a lot of these tips and study and things down. But if you haven't, this is your spot. And it's always good to review, right? So the time, 1 p.m. Central Time. Your emails give it to you in Eastern Standard Time, so that's an hour ahead. So it's not 2 o'clock, it's 1 o'clock here. If you're using your iPhone, here are the settings that you have to make for your phone. Very important. These videos are still great, like quick videos to explain how the thing goes. And for you, like once you get your test ID, do the exam demo, okay? It's a great chance to just kind of get yourself situated. Here are just the bullet points, like what you need, make sure that you're all set, these big things. And now you can have an email backup plan if for some reason it doesn't submit. They figured it out, at least for this week. Unfortunately, last week, you can't go back on this with the email submission. You can still submit for a retake for last week, but now you have this extra option for our test. So hopefully, it all goes smoothly. I'm going to be available always, so just keep reaching out and use this document as your kind of way to organize yourself on this stuff. Okay. All right. Good luck. Take care. We'll see you.